today we have let's say of Batwara family. Both Ayushi and Ashish are in the call, and then we also have Aryan, who has recently gained admission from India into the US universities. So we are going to cover both the scenarios, and I would humbly request you to type in your question in the chat so we can let's say take your questions on the go. And also I would request you to make the session more interactive so you get the maximum out of it. Ready?
All right, thanks Surendraji. So let me just say a few words and then we'll get going. So my name is Ashish Batwara. I'm from MBM 1996 batch. So as Surendraji mentioned, today's session is going to be very exciting. One thing that you must know that getting into good colleges is important, but not the end of the world. However, the most important thing is to get your foundation strong. That is what we plan to cover in this session, right? High school is the last opportunity for that, else it will be too late. Today, Ayushi and Aryan are going to talk about their experience and their journey. If you have not put your answers to the poll, please do so. I'm going to end the poll in 30 seconds. And after that, Ayushi will kick off the session.
Okay, thank you, Papa. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Nurturing Tomorrow Leaders Today, a session about high school and college admissions. We are so happy to see all of you. And with that, we wanted to get to know our audience a little bit more. So we just sent out a poll. We got to know you guys, what grades you're in and where you're from. And throughout today's session, we'll be covering a lot of important information towards maximizing your high school experience by sharing some helpful tips and tricks that worked for us. Later on, we will be covering a step-by-step guide through high school in two different perspectives as a US or domestic applicant, as well as an international student. I just wanted to note that this is not an all-encompassing presentation. We do not cover all of the different perspectives when it comes to applying for college, what your different interests are. So just take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. And just as I mentioned, that all of these views that we're going to express throughout the presentation are based on our own personal experiences. So do realize that, maybe this is not the right for you, and notice that when you want to step in and when you want to step out in terms of taking in our advice, we do encourage you to listen to the entire session just because it can have some really helpful tips that you can use to get through high school. So with that, we'll start our introductions. Hi, everyone. I'm Ayushi Batwara, and I graduated from Eastlake High School this past June. This upcoming fall, I'll be in UC Berkeley for the class of 2025 for their Management, Entrepreneurship, and Technology program, where I'll be pursuing a dual degree in computer science and business. A little bit more about me is that I used to live in California for like 7 years, which is where I attended school in 9th grade. And then we moved to Seattle area in 10th grade. And throughout my time in high school, I've had the opportunity to grow in many different ways as a student, a leader, and a contributing member of society, where it's through my initiatives and my activities that I realized I was very interested within computer science and healthcare, which has led me to participate and lead several different organizations, including serving as the state secretary for Washington HOSA, which is a national healthcare conference that is led by student leaders all across the state and internationally. I've also served as the president of National Computer Science Honor Society at my school, and I've also served as the vice president of Math Honor Societies. And beyond my academic endeavors, I've been able to express my interests and myself through dancing, painting, and my culture. I started our school's Indian Student Association, and I've also started my own dance company called Dancing Vilse, which I started in 6th grade. And I just want to say, throughout my involvement at my community at Eastlake, I've been grateful enough to have been nominated as the Student of the Year, an American Association of University Women Math Scholar, as well as a student speaker at graduation, which many of you might have watched my video on that. But overall, I'm just really excited to be here today and share kind of what worked for me throughout this presentation.
Aryan?
Hey guys. My name is Aryan and I grew up in India and I completed my schooling in India up until grade 12. Today I'm majoring in computer science and getting a minor in mathematics and business analytics at the University of Maryland in College Park. On campus I'm involved. I founded a club on campus called Big Think AI with my friends, and that's sort of the only leadership position I have as of today. I'm currently interning at Dell Technologies this summer, and my hobbies include listening to music, running, and photography.
All right, let me start. So I am from IMBM 92-96 batch, electrical engineering. And after that, I did my MTech from IIT Delhi and did my MBA from San Jose State in 2015. And I am almost through with my certificate in innovation and entrepreneurship from Stanford Business School. Currently, I work as head of software engineering, streaming data and analytics platform at Dell Technologies, right? And there are quite a few things that I can talk about, but we will limit this presentation to specifically the college admissions, right? So that we don't dilute our focus. With that, let's get going to the next slide.
So our first section for today's session is maximizing your high school experience. Maximizing your high school. Can you please mute yourself if you haven't already? Okay. Yeah, so we're just going to start with general high school advice that's pretty much applicable to anyone. So with that, first, I wanted to start off by explaining kind of what is the premise of high school, and kind of what I think the premise of high school is that it's all about exploration and discovery, whether it's academically exploring, socially, or extracurricularly. These are all some really awesome opportunities for you to grow during high school. Because here's the thing, in high school, you have your parents' support, but you also have the opportunity of being independent. You have so many different clubs to join, so many different options for classes to take, electives to opt into, different research and volunteering. There's a lot of doors for you to open, and they're just waiting for you to be open. And so that's kind of what I imagine the premise of high school being, kind of like an all-you-can-eat buffet. What do you want? What do you want to excel in? What do you want to take? What do you want to try? And all of this does is really set the foundation, because later on throughout college and just in general, you'll be wanting to see what are you interested in and what is in best interest for you, what you're passionate about. And so if you explore during high school, you'll be able to recognize, what are the different things that you want to pursue later on.
Aryan?
So at the bottom of each slide, I've put some text in Hindi, and what this slide is trying to say is that school एक छात्र के पूर्ण विकास के लिए है, और ये आने वाले भविष्य के लिए हमें तैयार कर रहा है. तो हमें पढ़ाई के बाहर भी दूसरी चीजें करनी चाहिए.
Yeah, and just as a side note, a lot of these slides have the Hindi, as Aryan mentioned, on the bottom of the slide, so we won't be reading off of them. So if you want to read them yourself, you can. And so here's kind of a quote that I thought was very aligned with what high school is all about. It's all about pursuing for excellence because success will then chase you. And I think that really resonates with a lot of students, is that if you put in the hard work, you put in the effort, you will get the results. It's just that you need to be the person who initiates all of that hard work. And so, nowadays, what I'm starting to see is this thing called the rat race, which basically, if it's not a term you're familiar with, it's this phenomenon that in high school, people are always already thinking about, how do I get into college? How do I go there? How do I get to the next thing? And it's sometimes it's like very draining, and you can see that a lot of it comes from the pressures induced by peers, parents, and also like internally. And it's only been exacerbated by social media. So nowadays people are posting all of their million accomplishments on LinkedIn or Instagram, and it kind of feels like you're always in this constant battle between comparing yourself and everybody else. And I kind of want to show you guys that, that's not the way you should approach high school or anything in general, because if you do that, you'll turn into this phenomenon called the resume boosters, versus resume chasers. So here what we're starting to see now is that a lot of people are just doing things that will look good on college apps or will look good on their resume. And these are the resume chasers. They're not doing things because they're genuinely interested or passionate about it. They're doing things just because, oh, it'll get me to the next thing or it'll get me there. That's not the mindset you should have. And these intentions become very clear to others. So as you're applying to leadership positions, you're interviewing for research internships, things like that, people begin to realize that your intentions are not in the subject itself, that they're just there because you want to get that name on your resume, on your LinkedIn. And so that's why everybody should really aspire to be a resume booster, where you're doing things that are genuinely of interest to you, rather than doing it for the sake of looking good on college apps or looking good on your resume. And so just the key takeaway from this slide is that really aspire to be a resume booster versus resume chaser, and to not indulge in this rat race, because it does completely drown you out. And so with that, some pros and cons. So first I'll start off with the cons, is that by engaging in this rat race where you're just always comparing yourself across your friends, like thinking about, oh, they're doing that internship, but I'm not doing that. And like fighting yourself internally is very mentally tolling. You'll never be satisfied with your achievements. You'll always have this grass is always greener on the other side. And it only gets worse if it's not acted upon early, which is why I want to make it very clear to you all that this can be a very, very detrimental part of high school, and it is part of the culture in high school. You know, a lot of people don't explicitly say that, oh, I'm trying to compare myself to you, but it happens internally. And so it's like something that you all should recognize actively and early on, so you don't engage in it. But something that I found that really helps because of this rat race was that realizing that not all competition is always detrimental, that you can actually use competition to push yourself to try harder on your own. You can use it as a motivation to drive yourself and motivate you to challenge yourself and try different things. So always remember that, you know, this is something that is prevalent in high schools nowadays, but it's not something that you should actively engage in and consider over the accomplishments that you are doing. And so, as I mentioned, that, you know, by getting caught up in the rat race, you can really like hurt yourself, but it's important to maintain your sanity throughout high school as it does ramp up. And so something that I found that really helped me was finding a mentor. So whether it's like, you know, asking your seniors or upperclassmen in your classes, or asking teachers or parents or friends, whatever it is, like you need to build that support network, whether it's getting through high school or college or whichever place you're in. I think that's a very important place for you to begin with, is like knowing who are the people that you can count on throughout high school, because it does get very, very intense sometimes. And it's very important to have someone you can ask for advice. And, you know, something that I noticed was that a lot of people don't talk to upperclassmen because they think they're scary or they're not like friendly, but you'll actually be surprised how many of them are willing to help, because they've been in the same shoes that you have been in. And so they want to help you. They've been through that experience. They know what they're doing. So I think that, you know, understanding that you can ask upperclassmen and just being a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning, but really reaching out to them and seeing what their advice is for you. I think that was really helpful.
Just to add a little bit flavor to what Ayushi just said, you know, I was, you know, in different state, and there it was a cutthroat competition, right? And people were just saying, okay, hey, his son or her son is doing this, and daughter is doing this, we should do that, right? Please, you know, please see what makes sense for you, right? Not every kid is different. You don't need to be, you know, changing everyone, right? What their passion is, that's more important. What the kid is enjoying, right? Please do not force. Good.
So with that, just in general for high school itself, I found some really handy resources that I kind of wish I discovered earlier on. These are Reddit, and different subreddits include AP students, RSAT, RACT, are applying to college. You probably don't know what I'm talking about, so I'm going to actually show you what this is. And I'll also post a link in the chat. But basically what Reddit is, it's basically a platform where you can ask anonymous questions regarding to this topic. Like for this one, it's applying to college. But as I mentioned, there's our SAT, ACT, AP students. So this is for the different standardized exams. And kind of what you can do here is you can like go through the different posts and you can find a lot of different resources that, you know, people have posted anonymously. You can also create your own post where you can ask anonymous feedback from people. And I found it to be really helpful because, you know, people online anonymously are able to give so much more feedback than you would imagine. It's just that you need to make sure that you need to filter out what's right and what's wrong. But I think overall, it's been a really helpful resource for me personally. So I'll put this one in the chat. I'll also show you an example of a search. You can search through the entire Reddit. And I kind of just looked up which school is better for computer science. And as you can see here, there's all sorts of posts like from 3 months ago, a year ago, you know, different masters, grad school, Penn State, you know, a lot of different things that people have already posted. So if you're willing to take, you know, an hour or two out of your day, look through different resources, ask different questions on Reddit, I think it is a very awesome resource that's often undertapped throughout high school. So I would definitely recommend that, and definitely check out the link that I posted in the chat. Another thing that I found helpful throughout high school was organizing myself. So whether that's using spreadsheets or Google Calendar or Google Keep or even physical notebooks, I thought that this was like a really awesome way to keep myself up to date on all of the different things and tasks I needed to accomplish. I'll show you an example of a spreadsheet later on with regards to the college application process, but I'll show you what Google Keep is. It's basically like a sticky note type thing that you can create linked to your Google account, and you can just like put in random links, random notes. I thought this was really nice to have just to keep yourself in check. But there's a lot of ton of different resources like Notion that people use and different things like that. So just whatever works for you, whatever you want to use to stay organized, that's kind of, you know, what I would recommend, just staying organized in general and knowing what's on your calendar.
So you want to show Google Sheet, Ayushi?
Yeah, I should Google Keep.
Spreadsheet. See how it is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
How easy it is, how convenient it is, and it gives you the cross-sectional view.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'll be sharing this again at the later part of our presentation. But basically, what I love about spreadsheets is you can completely personalize it. You can color code it. It's very nice on the eyes. So just personally for me, I found it really awesome. But you know, anything that works for you, even if it's very simple, just make sure to stay organized throughout high school because it can get very messy, and make sure your Google Drive and everything is super organized. So when you come back to it, everything is okay.
I would say two things, right? One is on the spreadsheet, right? During the college application process, the 4th year, right? I go to Ayushi and say, hey, where we stand, right? What schools are you applying? What are their dates, right? And she just straight goes there, and I can see the cross-sectional view. Very important for you to do that. The second thing is a Google Calendar, right? While Google Calendar is important, but you know, it's a family calendar. So because I know that, you know, okay, if Ayushi has set up something for me or as a family calendar, right? I can see it in my calendar. If I have to plan my weekend, I have to plan my weekdays, I can see straight right there, right? So that is really helpful because it goes very intense during the final year, right? When you are applying for the college applications. Go ahead. Ayushi, you are on mute.
You're muted.
Sorry. Okay, so just to recap the first section of this presentation, I really want you to take away that the premise of high school is all about discovery. You know, keep your doors open, always try different things, and just like really try to grow in as many ways as possible. And realize that a lot of the high school culture nowadays is all about this rat race. So don't involve yourself in it. Don't put yourself through that stress and that pressure, whether it's from, you know, yourself, your friends, your parents, whatever it is. Don't put yourself through that because honestly, you can get through and do so much better if you didn't engage in that. With that, you should build a support network, befriend seniors or upperclassmen. Use Reddit, 100% recommend using Reddit, and organizing yourself using spreadsheets, Google Calendar, etc. So that's the first section. If you have any questions, I'm seeing some questions in the chat. Make sure you keep sending those in the chat. We'll get to them at the end of the session. So thank you so much for doing that. All right, so now we're gonna kind of go into like a year-by-year guide of kind of like what we recommend for you to do every year of high school. So whether you're an 8th grader now or a 10th grader now has some really useful information for you. So starting off with freshman year, which is 9th grade, for students based in the US, I would recommend for you to create a list of goals, both academic goals as well as non-academic goals. So one example could be like, oh, I want to, take a course in computer science. Well, then you should, take that academic goal and create a 4-year plan. It doesn't have to be definite, but it should be aligned with the goals. So basically what a 4-year plan is, for those of you who don't know, it's just a plan of courses that you want to take throughout high school. So if you wanted to take, 6 courses in freshman year, another 6 courses in sophomore year, etc., you should probably try to map out what different classes you'll take and when to see which path you're on. I also recommend, as I mentioned, to try as many clubs as possible. You don't have to be extremely interested. People often think that you have to be the most passionate about a subject to join a club or to try something out. But really, all they're looking for is someone who's just remotely interested in the subject. And honestly, there's no harm in opting into an email list. Like worst comes to worst, you don't like the club, you're just on their email list. You can obviously opt out. So I would definitely recommend going all out, trying different clubs, different things. Then the summer after freshman year, I would recommend for you to volunteer or take an online course or just take it easy, because the summer after freshman year is probably the most relaxing summer you're going to have in high school. So, take it easy because it will ramp up from here.
Okay, and for the students based in India, I would recommend uh, starting by creating a 4-year plan of what you want your school experience to look like. You want to start thinking about the colleges you want to attend in the US. This will help you decide what exams you need to take. So if you're planning to get an undergraduate degree in the US, you want to think about taking the SAT or the ACT and the TOEFL. But what most people don't know is there's also something called a PSAT, which you can give before your SAT. And I think that ninth grade is the right time to do it. So if you're in ninth grade, you might want to start thinking about that. For extracurriculars, I would recommend joining clubs. I know India is big on MUN, which is Model United Nations. I never did it in high school, but a lot of people do, and it's good to have on your application. As Ayushi mentioned, volunteering always helps. So in India, if you can volunteer at the local animal shelter or an old age home or an NGO, whatever works for you. And most importantly, just focus on doing well at school. That's most important.
And so on the note of clubs, as Aryan mentioned, there's a lot of popular and typical clubs that you'll find at basically any school. So just as some samples we put on the slide, for example, there's a few business clubs that are very popular across the US, which are DECA and FBLA. And these are kind of national conferences that are kind of organized around a competition where you would compete in a certain business topic against like all the people in your state, and then you would move on to the national level and etc. So that's kind of what business is. You can definitely do more research on your own for these clubs, but they're very standard. For politics and more like, government related, there's speech and debate, which is very popular. There's different formats of speech, such as public policy, public forum, other types of debates that you can involve yourself in, as well as speeches like, oratory, or, the other types of speeches that you can involve yourself in. As Aryan mentioned, there's also Model UN or MUN, and that's all about just like finding a way to imitate what the UN works like in the entire society. As well as in medical, different medical clubs. One club is HOSA, which I was a part of. HOSA is all about like understanding different competitions, whether you can do like a, more hands-on type competition. Like there's some nursing events where you're actually, wrapping someone's ankle and you're competing and like understanding how you're supposed to do it, the different techniques, or you're doing something more technical, which is what I did. I did a competition on forensic science and kind of going through case studies and different autopsy reports, things like that. There's a lot of really interesting things. So I definitely recommend doing your research. In terms of cultural clubs, there's a ton of student associations at a lot of schools. When I first moved to Eastlake, I didn't find a student association for Indian students, so I created one. That's always an option. If you don't have any clubs at your school that you want to have one, you can always just create one for yourself. There's also a bunch of academic, research, and competitive clubs. I'll just put some examples on you, which is Science Olympiad, Robotics, Biology Olympiad, Math Olympiad, different honor societies. There's a lot of different options in terms of those. Those do get competitive as that's their nature, but they're all about the different academic topics as mentioned. For the last section, I just put community service, which is one of them is Key Club. And basically what you do for Key Club is that you basically do a lot of volunteer projects throughout your society, and you kind of work with other Key Club members to create impactful service projects. So yeah. So moving on to 10th grade, what I recommend for students based in the US. So as I mentioned, we started a list of goals in 9th grade. So now is your time to keep refining them and making them more specific. This year, I also recommend to take 1 to 3 AP exams. And if you're not familiar with what AP exams are, these are advanced placement exams, and they're basically college level courses that you can take in high school, and they're designed for high schoolers to take them. For example, there's AP chemistry, AP biology, AP physics. There's a lot of different courses that you can take based on what your interests are, but I would also recommend just taking them just so you can get an idea of what the course is all about. So definitely in 10th grade, I would recommend at least taking one just to try it out. But if that you're not comfortable with that, that's fine too. Also, I would recommend now, in 9th grade, you explored a lot of different clubs. Let's say you joined like 5 or 6 different clubs. 10th grade is the time to start narrowing that down and filtering it out. You want to focus on 2 to 4 clubs maximum. I would not recommend above that because your time is precious and you need to recognize that, right? Juggling 5 or 6 different clubs is not of your best interest. I would also recommend at the end of 10th grade for applying for leadership positions. So in these clubs that you're interested in, try to see how you can become a leader for one of them. For example, if you're interested in the computer science club and you want to you want to be more involved in that club later on, then that's the time to say like, hey, I want to be an officer for this club so I can lead some of the events the next year. Finally, for the summer after sophomore year, I would definitely recommend applying to summer volunteer research, internships, and different opportunities like that, because they will get competitive, especially nowadays. They're becoming extremely competitive. So I'd start researching early for dates and deadlines. Do a ton of research on Google. Google will be your best friend if it isn't already. Just really keep yourself organized on what the different dates are, what the different application procedures are. A lot of times they'll ask you to write, big long essays and then submit a video portfolio. There's all sorts of different elements of these things. So make sure you keep yourself on track to submit those. And finally, for the summer after sophomore year, this is the summer where you're just going to be doing standardized test prep. That's like what the standard is across most students. And that's kind of what I did, was that this summer is all about standardized test prep, whether it's SAT or ACT or whatever new standardized test comes up, you'll likely be doing it this summer. So whether it's like, we'll talk a little bit about this in the next couple of slides, but just make sure that this summer you're spending a good amount of time studying for that.
And for students based in India, I would recommend just focusing on doing well in board exams if you're in your 10th grade. That is, if you're in ICSE or CBSE board. I would say that the board exams are important to getting in the US colleges because they ask for your board marks. And I would say start preparing for the SAT or ACT. You want to take them as early as possible because you can always retake them. And one thing that I would say for people in India is that if you're trying to give the SAT or ACT, I would suggest reading more novels, English novels, because they help you build comprehension skills that'll help you on every standardized test that you will ever take. A lot of people might have trouble with the English sections. I did as well, but I'd say if you have time, start reading more. what you want to do is make a list of schools and requirements that the schools have for admissions. Making a requirement, making a list of schools will help you narrow down what exams you want to take, what exams you want to take, because some schools they just want to see your SAT. They don't really care how many advanced placement AP exams you took. So you don't want to waste too much time doing that. And finally, if you're in 10th grade in India, you want to decide what you want to do for grade 11 and 12, basically what path you want to take. I did CBSE, but I know people that did ICSE, people that did the state board, people that went to IB schools, and I know someone that took A levels as a part of his high school exams. So you have to pick your path.
So as I mentioned, standardized exams. So just a little side note, this year for my college application season for class of 2021, a lot of schools went test optional. So that means that you are able to send your scores if you're able to, have an opportunity to test. In years forward, I don't know what's going to be happening, but I know a lot of schools, at least for a class of 2026, or sorry, class of 2022, which will be applying this year, some schools are requiring your SAT and ACT scores. So for right now, I would recommend for people still in high school, you would still probably be taking these tests, but for the most up-to-date information, obviously keep yourself updated. But something that I noticed in general about standardized exams, and a trap that I kind of fell into with the whole rat race scenario, is that you can get obsessed with perfect and near perfect scores. And that is honestly very unnecessarily draining. Like, I know the Indian community is all about getting the top score, the top rank, all of that. But I 100% don't recommend that, because beyond a certain threshold, scores don't make a difference. The American university system, applications for that system is very geared towards understanding you as a complete person. They're not looking for the number one ranker. In fact, there have been stories online that you can read about where, people who get the full complete marks on their SAT 1600, they don't get admission into a lot of top universities. So I really want you to notice that, if you get, like, let's say a 1450, that is not the end all be all. There is still opportunity for you to show that you're capable of being a student at whatever college through other means. And so what I recommend for preparing is that you should definitely self-study if you're able to. And if you think that you need outside help, which is totally valid, definitely reach out and tutor, reach out in different Facebook groups to see who are the local tutors who are really good. You can find tutors online. There's a lot of online programs as well. Personally speaking, for me, I prepared a lot with just buying textbooks for SAT and ACT, and also taking practice exams. And here's one of the places where I would recommend using Reddit. There's a separate subreddit called our ACT and our SAT that I talked about earlier. And you can kind of just find resources on there and find what other people experienced. All right, so for junior year, which is 11th grade, for students based in the US, again, you have that same list of goals. Try to see which goals you're accomplishing, which goals you're on track for, different things like that. I would also recommend to register to take standardized testing as soon as possible, because the more you delay it, the farther you may have to travel, or the less likely it is you'll get spots in the different places that you can test in. A lot of people, in my experience, took their SAT, ACT, and other standardized exams starting in August. So right after 10th grade summer ends, you just start registering for these exams, because you don't know which exam, you don't know how many times you want to take this. You can take these standardized exams as many times as you want to. So I would definitely recommend starting early so you don't have less opportunities. Also in this year, you would take more rigorous coursework. I would argue that 11th grade is when you should peak your coursework. You should have the most intense courses during this year. And this is kind of why, a lot of people say 11th grade is the hardest year, is because they take the most intense courses. They're taking standardized testing. They're doing leadership positions. So it does get very intense. But I do recommend doing the most intensive course you can, because, this is the year that'll shine on your college apps. Also, you should also find ways to gain valuable experiences in extracurricular activities. So this could look like different leadership positions, volunteer efforts, self-driven initiatives, other things like that, because really what we'll get to later on throughout college apps and that stuff is that all you're doing is through this process, you're really writing about the different experiences you've had in high school, how you've come to realize that, this is what major I'm interested in. Here's why. Here's an experience that I had in 11th grade or in 10th grade that led me to think that, this is the route for me. So like really think about when you're approaching 11th grade or really any grade, is think about what experience are you getting out of your time? Like you're putting time into something. Are you getting something out of it that's valuable for you? And sometimes the answer is no, and that's fine. But you want to make sure that you have at least a few different things that you're engaging in that really have a reward at the end of the day, that you actually feel like you're self-satisfied with what you put into that. This year, you would also ask teachers for letters of recommendation. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. And then also for this summer, this would be your most serious summer. So you should either be doing an internship, you should be volunteering or completing college coursework. A lot of colleges, like I know Johns Hopkins, Stanford, MIT, all of these colleges have online courses that you can actually register for the summer, and they have like different cohorts and specialized programs. So definitely do your research if that's what you're interested in. And again, research goes a long way, staying organized goes a long way, because there's a lot of different things that you have to keep track of as a high school student. So definitely be organized.
Awesome. So for students based in India in 11th grade, I would say what's most important is for you to maintain a good academic standing in school. I know someone asked in the chat if how important GPA was, and at least if you're an international student, extracurriculars, obviously they're important, but in my experience, I've found that if you had a great SAT score and no extracurriculars to go with it, my friends still got into good colleges. So worry more about academics, and you want to have good relations with teachers because they're going to be the ones writing your recommendation letters, and they could basically make or break your career. And you want to take the take your last shot at standardized tests this year, because what happens is typically you start applying very early in 12th grade for colleges. So 11th grade, the summer after 11th grade is probably your last attempt at taking the SAT or ACT or TOEFL, whatever exams you're planning on taking. And an important tip for anyone that's in India, whether if you're applying for undergraduate schools or masters or for your master's program, just know that the admissions counselors in India that will charge you huge sums of money, they don't know anything. Like all of their knowledge comes from the internet as well. So you might as well just use the internet as your resource instead of paying them um, huge sums of money to Google things for you. So don't let anyone tell you that, oh, I can get your kid into this college, I can do this for you. It's all on you.
Awesome. So as I was mentioning earlier, letters of recommendation. So just as a side note, most colleges require you to submit at least one, but usually 2 to 3 letters of recommendation. And typically it's one is from a STEM teacher, which is a science, technology, engineering, or mathematics teacher. One is from a humanities teacher, and one could be from another teacher. So it could be another teacher, an advisor, a manager, a coach, a supervisor at an internship, different things like that. But typically, most likely you will have one from a more STEM teacher and one from a more English, history, social sciences teacher. So always make sure, like throughout high school, that that always be on good terms with your teachers. That should be a ground rule number one. But also like make sure that, in some classes, you're talking a little bit more, you're engaging a little bit more than you normally would, or that you would normally be comfortable in. So get out of your comfort zone, really like engage with the content, engage with the classroom, like, find ways to stand out in your classroom. in these specific classes where you would ask these teachers for letters of recommendation. And typically you would ask for letters of recommendation in the middle of junior year or 11th grade. But I know sometimes you can ask earlier or later, but I would do recommend asking before the year ends. And finally, for senior year or 12th grade, for students based in the US, college apps will take up the majority of the first semester. So you should be very wise and cautious about the rigor of the courses you take in 12th grade, which is why I said 11th grade should be your most academically rigorous year, because you don't want to take extremely hard courses in 12th grade and juggle that with college apps, because that can get really, really tough really fast. You should also think about minimizing your time commitment from extracurricular activities. Kind of like you can imagine throughout high school, it's kind of like a funnel in terms of your activities. In 9th grade, you start off trying a lot of different things, but by the time you get to 12th grade, you really refined it to those 1 or 2 or 3 clubs that you're really most interested in, and dedicate your time in 12th grade to those and getting experiences in those. Second semester will be a lot lighter, so you should maximize your fun here, but also don't fail your classes either. At this time in second semester, you'd most likely be applying the scholarships for college. There's plenty of resources online. I won't get into that in this presentation, but let me know if you have questions.
And for students based in India, if you're in 12th grade, what's most likely is that you've started applying to colleges. But I think that as soon as you walk into your 12th grade is when you start applying to colleges. The idea is that if you are an international student, you want to apply early action, which is the earliest you can apply to a college, I believe. And the reason for this is I think that most colleges have a certain quota for international students, and you don't want to wait until the late application. You basically you just want to apply as soon as possible so that you can increase your chances of getting in. Now, your school might have to submit predicted scores to colleges because of how early you're applying. So you're applying in the start of 12th grade, but you don't have your board results yet or your 12th grade marks yet. So you might have to ask your school to provide the university with a document which says that, oh, this student is good at school, he's going to get this percentage or something like that. One thing that I learned is that not through personal experience, but I know people that didn't do well in their 12th grade and then they had their admissions offer taken back or revoked. So what you want to do is you want to maintain the same performance throughout high school, even after you get your acceptance. So typically you will get your acceptance halfway through 12th standard. And that you might be like, I don't have to study for my final exams anymore, I'm already into college, but they're looking for your final grade, so be careful of that.
All right, so now we're going to transition over to the college applications section for the presentation. So let's get going. So as Aryan mentioned, there's this huge bubble of college counseling and everybody's talking about, whether I should get a college counselor or whether I should do it by myself. And honestly, it's hard to say whether you should or should not have a college counselor, at least here in the US, because some can be very beneficial while others will not make a difference. So what I would recommend for you to do if you're interested in going this route is to do your research. You should ask upperclassmen or people who are at the universities you want to be at, kind of what helped them get to those colleges, what different college counselors did they use, did they even use college counselors, who is the best person locally that I can get in touch with. These are the different questions that you should be asking yourself, as well as your community members. In addition, another note for college counseling is that they can get very expensive and they can be completely booked very quickly, and they have a lot of time constraints and deadlines. So you definitely want to do your research earlier on for college counseling if this is something you're interested in. I know that a lot of people have programs that start in 9th grade, so they start coaching you in 9th grade and up. I don't know if I would personally do that. I didn't do that in high school. I don't think I would have done it if I had to redo high school again. But it is an option for someone who needs the extra boost or the extra help. If you don't have one, you'll also be okay. Like college counseling is not something that everyone does. You should ask your teachers, parents, family for help, and you can ask them to review your essays, ask them to help you out in like timing out things, brainstorming, really tap into your support network here because they're the ones that can really help you out throughout this process. But again, if college counseling is the route for you, then you should definitely do your research earlier on. All right, so for the number of colleges to apply to, so a lot of people have posted these videos where they're like applying to 40 different colleges, 30 different colleges. I just want to know applications are not free. Each application costs $60 and more per app. I don't know what it's for international students, but that's at least domestically, it's $60 plus for each application. So I would like highly recommend for you to not apply to 40 different schools, obviously. I would first recommend for you to apply to one extreme safety school, or this is a school that you're basically 100% guaranteed to get into. Here in Washington, we have a school called Washington State University. And for people in high school who have GPAs above 3.5, they're guaranteed admission there. So that kind of like took out my like safety guaranteed school that I already knew that I was going to get in there. So it doesn't make any sense for you to add any more safeties on top of that because you already know worst comes to worst, you have a school secured. Then I would recommend 3 to 4 target schools. And kind of what target schools are these are schools that you have a pretty good shot at, but you don't really know that you'll get in. You don't have that confirmation that you'll get in. And typically speaking for target schools, usually the acceptance rate, if you want to have a more numerical value, ranges from like anywhere from like 30% or 35% to 20% acceptance rates. Those are kind of like what I would call targets, but obviously you should definitely apply to a bunch of schools in this range, which is like 3 to 4 is the ideal amount. And then finally, I would recommend applying 2 or more dream schools. So I want to make a quick note, no matter like how awesome you think you are or smart you think you are or how talented you are, a lot of these dream schools, like the top name brands that you're here, like Berkeley or Stanford, MIT, Caltech, Carnegie Mellon, all of the schools that are falling into the less than 5% or even like less than like 8% acceptance rate, they're not guaranteed for anyone, right? Like these are schools that get in like 40,000 applicants every year, and to pick only like 5% of that, or some schools are even lower, like 2%, it's not guaranteed for anyone. So I would definitely recommend like applying to as many as you can within this range, but don't overkill yourself because a lot of these schools have a lot of different essays that you would have to write. But just think about like these schools that everybody is kind of like in the waters for. No one knows if they're going to be selected, no matter how talented you are, because there is an unknown luck element in college applications. So it's very likely that you can get in, but also that you won't be able to get in. Now, generally speaking, most students that like my friends and like that I've applied to typically apply to 6 to 10 colleges. And it's not advisable to apply more than 15 because that can get very stressful very fast. You definitely don't want to be in that 40 range though. So if you decide to apply 20, that's okay. But anything beyond that will get very annoying very quickly. All right, so these are the different college application types. There's a lot of different types in terms of like the different sessions that you would apply. I know Aryan talked about early action before that, but I just want to kind of go over the different types. So the first type that we'll talk about is the restrictive early action or REA schools. These are schools that are non-binding. And what do I mean by non-binding? So non-binding basically means that if you get admitted into this school, you don't have to attend it. You're not committed to attending that school. Whereas binding would be like if you're accepted into the school, that is the school you have to attend. And so for REA, it's a non-binding agreement. But what it means by restrictive is it means that you can only apply to one school across all categories in the early session. So that means if you're thinking of applying to another school early, you won't be able to because this is restrictive early action. Some of the more popular schools that are in this category include Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, etc. So these are schools like if you decide to apply to, let's say, Harvard in restrictive early action, you will not be able to apply to any other early action or early decision schools. For early action, I kind of think as this is like the most universal, the most schools that people apply to typically, it's a non-binding, non-restrictive agreement where basically you can apply to as many schools within the early action category. Some examples include Georgia Tech, Caltech, UMich, Northeastern, UT Austin, etc. And then finally, for the last early decision application, for the early applications is early decision or ED. This is binding. So that means if you get in, you are committed to going to that school and that's it. There are very rare chances that you'll be able to get out of this agreement. So be very cautious about determining whether or not you want to do ED. You can only apply to one school ED, but you can apply to other schools EA. So this is not completely restrictive. But if you do get in, you have to go to that school. Some examples include UPenn, Cornell, Brown, Duke, etc. You can obviously find all this information online, but here's just like a quick overview. In terms of the different college application times for regular, there's regular decision, which is non-binding. And it's basically your last chance to apply, but there are potentially lower chances of acceptance rates. And almost all colleges have regular decisions. So this is something that you'll see at almost pretty much any college that you're trying to apply to. So yeah, I don't have to list examples for this one because you can literally think of any school, they probably have an RD. Rolling admissions is basically non-binding. It has the same deadline as RD, but some schools also extend it past RD. You basically apply on a rolling basis and hear back sooner. So it's kind of like a first come, first serve type thing where they just like see how many people are applying and based on their applications, they just send you back in information. A lot of these schools are like Penn State, Michigan State, Arizona State. I had friends that applied to these schools, in July after junior year, and they got their results in August. So they already confirmed the school that they were going, that they had another school in their back pocket, say they didn't get into any other school. So rolling admissions can be helpful. But again, if you have an extreme safety or a guaranteed school, you typically don't need to apply to these schools. So there's a question. Should I do REA, EA, or ED? And, that's a good question. I don't know, right? There's a lot of different factors that you can consider when you're applying through this process. In general, I have like a few questions that you should ask yourself, but there's obviously a huge list of questions that you should consider. But in general, for all of them, will all of your applications be in the quality you want them to be in during November? Because a lot of these applications are due in November of senior year. So will all of your applications be in that top-notch quality you want to be in for that deadline? In specific for ED applicants, if you accepted to your ED school, can your family afford the tuition, right? So you want to do your research. A lot of these ED schools are private universities, and their tuition can be anywhere from like $70,000 to $80,000 for domestic and international applicants. In addition to that, you want to ask yourself, do you want to forego the opportunity to study at any other university? So basically, as I mentioned, if you get into an ED school, you're not allowed, it's under there's a very less likelihood that you'll be allowed to go to any other school. So it's like pretty much binding. So if you're able to get into this ED school, are you willing to sacrifice all of your other applications and reject all of those schools without seeing your results? That's a question that a lot of people struggle with. So I definitely recommend thinking about this earlier on. In terms of REA applicants, so for REA, do you want to potentially forego the opportunity to get results earlier than March? So as I mentioned, REA is binding. So that means that if you have like a school that you want to apply to in early action and hear the results sooner, you can only apply to an REA school. You cannot apply early action as well. So do you want to give up that opportunity to hear back earlier? So there's a lot of questions that you should consider. If you're in like 10th or 9th or 8th grade, or even 11th grade, you don't have to be worrying about this, but for seniors especially, would recommend thinking about these questions right now. Here's just like a kind of like a general college application timeline. It's not specific at all, but it's just to give you an idea and a direction of kind of what to expect. So in July to August, when you're entering into 12th grade, you should first of all seek inspiration and direction from college videos on YouTube. I'll actually show you an example. So you can, if you go onto YouTube and you literally look up essays that got me into, that's like a key phrase that people typically use. And you can see like these people are just reading their essays that got them into MIT or almost every school, Harvard, Stanford, Caltech, Princeton. There's like literally an endless list, right? And this is like a really helpful resource, but I want to be a little bit cautious. I would not recommend watching these videos and then immediately writing your essays because you don't want to copy your essays. There have been plenty of cases where people have been called out for plagiarizing their essays and have their admissions in jeopardy. So you definitely want to make sure that you're seeking inspiration, but you're not copying their essays or their ideas because honestly, everyone is different. So you just want to see kind of what theme, what strategy are they taking and kind of apply that same similar strategy, but don't use their essays at all. At this time, you would also begin looking at essay prompts and formulating different ideas. Again, when you watch these YouTube videos, you'll begin to think of more ideas. And then, later on, when you have free time, you can think about more of these ideas and phrasing them into questions and answers. In September, you should create your activities list. Basically, an activities list is just all of the different activities you participated in, as well as a little short description. At this time, you would also be writing your personal statement, which I'll describe in a little bit. And then in October, you would be writing your supplemental essays. So supplemental essays, I'll also show you an example in just a little bit, so we'll get to that. At this time, you would also revise and edit your personal statement. And then finally, in November, you would submit your early action, early decision, or REA applications. So that's where a huge wave of applications comes. Then December, January, you would be revising and polishing for RD applications. And January is like the most, it has the most deadlines for RD because all of the schools require you to submit their applications by like January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. That entire week is just college application submission. So winter break is pretty tough, but you'll get through it. So as I was mentioning earlier, what is this personal statement and what is like the huge conversation about this? So the personal statement is a around 650 word essay to show a college admissions committee who you are. And I would argue that this is the most important essay in your college application because this is kind of like the biggest space you would get to pitch yourself and tell them, this is who you are and this is why you should get admission. It's all about telling a story to an unknown admissions reader and convincing them that you have the qualities of the person they are looking for. Again, as I mentioned, that you should definitely utilize these kinds of resources, Reddit and like other sources to find sample essays to help guide kind of your vision in terms of like, what do people typically write about? How can I make myself stand out? What are the different strategies that I can take? I would recommend really doing that. And here's just to show you the first year essay prompts for the personal statement on the Common App. So here you can see some of them. As you can see, like, I'll just read one out loud. Reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking? What was the outcome, right? So it's like very broad, open-ended question. But again, if you don't think of anything for these questions, there's also this one. Share an essay on any topic of your choice. Right? So there's a lot of freedom and flexibility when it comes to the personal statement. And it's important to realize that it's all about convincing them that you are the person, you are unique, and you deserve admission. And so a little bit more about the activity statements and supplemental essays. So these are actually much shorter essay prompts that require more individualized experiences that are usually tailored towards the major you choose. So for example, here are some supplemental essays from Johns Hopkins University from last year. So as you can see, they have just one supplemental question that's 300 to 400 words. And it says, use this space to share something you'd like admissions community to know about, your interests, blah, 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 right? So it's all about like finding more fine-tuned things. So that's what the supplemental section is for. In terms of activities, this is what the Common App says. You can have 50 characters to put the description, 100 characters for the organization name, 100 characters for the details and the honors one accomplishments. So there's like a lot of, it's very, very short and sweet. So you can read these examples on their website, but that's just an idea. Activity statements will be your shortest essays that you write, then supplemental essays, and then your big personal statement. So there's a lot of different essays you have to think about, which is why I said organization is key. And you should use something like this to really sort through your different college applications. So you can see the different universities. Here's just an example line. When is the deadline? What application portal? And then you can see, did you get your recommendations? What majors did you apply? What is the decision date? Did you finish your essays? All of these kinds of things you have to keep track of. So be very organized in the process. Finally, I'd like to hand it off to my dad to talk about a little bit of the role for parents. So, yep.
Well, I condensed everything in one slide and I will not take much time, but most important thing is to create a story. You want to show how unique you are, right? So come up with unique theme and relevant messages, right? Stay away from cookie cutter stories, right? So as I usually mention, don't copy paste, from somebody else's essays, right? Because admission committee has been reviewing like tens of thousands of essays every single year, right? Some 40,000, 50,000. Within few seconds, they immediately know that, it's a cookie cutter and they won't even consider you. So try to show your uniqueness, right? And one thing that rule of thumb is, right, you only get 30 seconds, right, from anyone who is reviewing your essay. If you can get their attention for the first 30 seconds, you will get another 30 seconds, right? The moment they are not interested for the last 30 seconds, they will not look at it mostly, right? So important thing is iterate and iterate. Keep brainstorming until you get it. So I used to basically discuss on almost like every other day with Ayushi, right? We used to refine things, right? And until the day of submission, right? Keep asking questions. Why should admission committee take you? Why should admission committee admit you? What you bring on the table, right? I used to basically provide some. I used to criticize Ayushi a lot, right? It's all constructive, hey, I'm not happy with this, right? I think I don't understand that, right? If I'm not able to understand, then I guaranteed that others will not be able to understand. So until I'm satisfied, I used to basically criticize constructively, and we used to iterate, right? Look at the blind spots, right? Sometimes you think as a student, right, you think that these are all the only thing that I can do, right? You don't look at the adjacent things, right? But that's where parents come into picture, right? Because areas where they could be blind, right? You basically open up those things with them, right? How about this? How about that? How can we phrase this, right? How can we put this into your admission application, right? Then the other thing, why should admission committee accept you? Be very thoughtful about that, and understand when to step in and when to pull back, right? For example, I used to discuss a lot of things with Ayushi. Sometimes she, of course, as a human being, it's like, what, hey, you get away from here. Okay, so it's like, understand when to step in and when to pull back, because you would like to empower your kid, right? You want them to think on the spot, right? Don't try to enforce things, right? And as I mentioned, think about the admission committee. They just have, I mentioned 2 minutes here, but put it with 30 seconds to 1 minute. If you are not able to interest them for the last 30 seconds or 1 minute, they will not look at the rest of your application. Availability, ensure that your calendar is free for the couple of days prior to the application deadline, because a lot of iteration is required there. That's where your family calendar comes into picture. And space out your college applications, few in EA, and few in whatever RD, and even RD, there are different schools have different deadlines, right? Your Google calendar and the spreadsheet is super important. Make sure that you have it taken care of, and prioritize guide and advice, right? That's my key, right? I used to prioritize, okay, we had the whiteboard at our home. Okay, this school deadline is this is this, right? And how these school applications are intertwined, right? And how we should prioritize it. So super important. You should have on your tips, majors, right? It's not that, for every school you have to apply for computer science, right? Some school are very competitive for computer science, but may not be as competitive for other majors, right? But once you get in, you have an opportunity after first year to change your major, right? So be cautious about, what majors that you apply, right? And where you have more chances, right? So we did apply for, a couple of different majors in different schools, right? But limit that. Don't apply, 10 different majors. Otherwise, you will dilute your essays. And last but not least, support, empower and provide moral support. It is very intense, at least for last 3-4 months during the college application. And rejection may not be the end of the world, right? I have seen basically, and sometimes you get into the wait list. Sometimes, you feel that you are rejected. It is not the end of the world, right? There are schools out there, right? And as I mentioned, it could be purely by luck, right? Think about, schools get 50,000 applications and their admission rate is 2%. That means only 1,000 applicants can get in, right? It is easy to basically shortlist 10,000 applications out of 50,000. But beyond 10,000, it will be very hard for application committee, admission committee to shortlist. So at the end, it could be a lottery system. You know what? I could able to get down from 50,000 to 5,000, but beyond 5,000, it's very hard to differentiate. Okay, now let's have a lottery. So if you have not got into, the admission in a particular school, it's not the end of the world. Choose ED options very carefully. Be ready to make tough decisions, right? We had that, scenario this year, right? So I will not describe in detail, but yeah, we have gone through this. So I have practical experience with that. And stay away from the rat race, right? Please do that. It's not that, you have to, if somebody has got into this school, you have to get into this school. Not necessarily. If somebody has done the counselor and you have to do counseling, no. If somebody has done the coaching for SAT and you have to do it, really, not really. Go with your passion. That's all I would say. All right, that's it from my side.
Okay, thank you. Finally, before we get into the Q&A session, I wanted to share an opportunity that's come up for 6th through 8th graders. So there's this program called Accelerate Hack Plus Plus that I co-founded with a few of my friends who will be attending UW for computer science. We're going to have a 2-week app building intensive program designed to integrate business and technology in a hackathon-like setting. We don't expect students to have any prior coding experience. And basically it's for students 6 or 8, and it's happening on July 12th on Monday to the 23rd from 3 to 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up here on the tinyurl.com/techcelerate2021. I'll also put the chat on the website and you can take a look at our website, and I'll also put this in the chat.
And this is only for US students.
Yeah. So with that, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone for attending this session. I really hope that it was helpful. And I know a lot of you had a lot of different questions that you were asking in the chat. So now I'd like to take that opportunity to open up the floor for your questions, but also if you wanted to receive a copy of this presentation and or the recording, you should definitely fill out this form and we'll send that to you via email. So make sure if you get the chance to fill that out. But with that, I'd like to open the floor for questions. So
can you put that link? Can you put that link in the chat as well?
Yeah, let me do that. All right, I put the link in the chat.
So no, you have put the Google Doc link. No, you have to put the.
No, it should link to the.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's open it up for the question and answer. There are quite a few questions in the chat. Let's go one by one, or maybe people can ask questions. So unmute yourself and ask the questions.
Yep.
Okay, take it from chat and then we can get going, Ayushi.
Yeah, I think Aryan was answering a lot of the questions on the chat. So
maybe you can.
Yeah, I think I got all of them, but if I didn't, just let me know.
Yeah, so just please speak up. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, you could even put your questions in the chat and we can answer them.
Can you start sharing the chat?
Yeah, don't be shy. We're here to help. So if you have any questions, just definitely drop them in.
Hey, Ayushi. I'm a dad here, so not a student. And just one thing I want to say as a parent, when my kids were applying to college, that whenever they were writing their essays, I made them. They would read, like you said, you have to go by so many iteration of the essays. So I would have, whenever they would bring it to me, I would say, okay, read it out loud in front of me. When they would read out loud, they would always find mistake. And whenever they made a mistake, I said, okay, now make a change, go back, start from the beginning. They would get so much irritated. But really, I'm telling you, when you read it out loud, that is when you really find, oh, wait, I was thinking something else and I wrote something else. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I definitely do recommend just like even just talking to your parents or a mentor, that really helps like the whole essay writing process, because these essays are so like different from the academic essays you would typically write. So there it's like a very different approach you have to take with that. A question I got in the chat was, how many AP courses should we make? How many should we take in over the summer? Things like that. So in terms of AP courses, I would say that it really depends from school to school, like based on what your school offers. But in terms of like speaking generally, I would say anywhere from like 8 APs throughout your entire career, so not in 1 year, throughout your entire high school. I would say like 8 APs to like upwards. So I know some schools offer like 15 APs max, things like that. But just remember that academics is not your entire profile. So if academics are not your forte, then really find your passion and explore your passion through other things. Like you don't have to just do APs, but I would say like a good like baseline for US students who have APs at their school, maybe around 8 throughout your entire high school career would be a good baseline. Some other questions that we're getting. I want to know how we will get a letter of recommendation from a teacher in a new school as your teacher doesn't know about you. So I think letters of recommendation, the biggest thing with that is it doesn't really matter how long you know the teacher, as long as you're able to make an impact in that class. If they're able to sense that you're able to contribute to the class, like even if it's been like 2 months since you've known that teacher, you want to do your best to really find a way to stand out, to show the teacher that you're actually interested in the class and in the studies and activities that are happening in the class. So definitely find ways to stand out. Remember, it's like quality, not quantity. So if you've known that teacher for 10 years, it won't make a difference unless you actually invest something in the class.
Hello?
Oh, go ahead.
Hi, Ayushi. Thank you for that presentation. But I have a question. I'm actually in 7th grade, and do you have any like recommendations for what I should do now? Like 3 or 4 recommendations for me?
I would say for someone in 7th grade, I would definitely recommend for you to think about all of this stuff, but don't take it too seriously right now. Again, I think anytime before 9th grade is all about exploration. So just try different things, be open to things, keep an open mindset. You can like, obviously you can do some other things like, volunteering, things like that, but don't feel like pressured by any means, because the things you do in 7th grade, you're likely not going to bring up at all later on. But the things you do in 7th grade can be a good way to explore different ideas and different concepts and things like that. So I would recommend that, you just keep yourself open to things, but don't fall into the pressure of college applications or things like that, because you have a long way to get there. So just have an open mind and just like really enjoy school right now, because it will get tougher later on. So, but yeah,
Alright,
thank you.
If there are questions on chat, so you see,
Sure.
but
So
this is
I can address a few of them. I think Vikram and a couple other people wanted to know if there are scholarships and how the finances would work. So I'm an international student, and what I realized is if you do well in the exams like the SAT, and you have good high school grades, you can get a lot of scholarships. Colleges will even give you full rides, maybe 75% off, 100% off. But what they'll typically do is they'll give you scholarship on tuition, which is just like one part of your fees. So you would still have to pay for living and food. That I don't think any college is going to pay for, or I might be wrong, but that's what I believe. So uh, if you do well, yeah, you can definitely get scholarships, especially the big private schools, even public schools. They'll give you scholarships. And yeah, and I mean, if you wanted to find out the cost of living for an international student, you could just look up uh, it varies for different universities. So I would say if you wanted to look up like, I don't know, Harvard, maybe you could just go on their website and it'll typically say in state and out of state. So I think international students fall in out of state category, and you essentially pay the same tuition as an out of state student. So what that means is you'd be paying the same amount as any other American who's just from a different state in the US.
And there is a net price calculator for every school actually.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is another question I see, UC Berkeley versus UW.
Okay.
Interesting. So
So we actually had that debate this past year for deciding between schools. I guess like the biggest difference that I found personally between UC Berkeley and UW Seattle was that like the environment you're going to be in. UC Berkeley is in like the heart of Silicon Valley, so you're going to be in the hub of startups, all of, like tech industry, things like that. UW Seattle, like they're like Seattle is a big for tech as well, but I think the more startup focus and startup stuff is really bubbling up in Berkeley area, as well as like the program that I got into. So I'll be studying 2 different bachelor's degrees, business as well as computer science. So that kind of made a difference, but there's a lot of few specific elements that I kind of won't get into just for the best interest of everyone. But if you have any more questions, you can feel free to reach out to me.
One thing that I would like to add is the UW, you can get in, but computer science, getting into computer science is a direct admission. So don't think that, after first year, in most cases, right, you will have an opportunity to get into computer science. If you are not getting directly into computer science in UW, right, it's a highly unlikely that you will get in post 1 year, right? So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and just to add to that, when I got into the University of Maryland, I didn't have a direct admit, but I got into the computer science program after 1 year. I also got into uh, UW's uh, UW's general program, so I could. But what I saw was that they don't guarantee admission to their computer science program. Like they have limited seats, so you have to be very careful about what where you're going and if you can make it into the computer science program. Now, talking about computer science, I know students at UMD who are from India who aren't studying computer science, like they're doing maybe mechanical, aerospace engineering, and they have better internships than computer science majors. Like, so computer science is definitely good. If you like it, go for it. I would say that's where everything is at, all the employment. But any form of engineering is good enough in the US. Any form of engineering, you're yeah. So don't pick computer science blindly, I guess.
I just want to add to that a little bit more about applying to programs and like different programs that you're applying to when you're thinking about college applications. Is that, like Aryan mentioned, a lot of them are direct admit programs. So meaning if you get into that school but you don't get in for that major, it is very unlikely that you will get that major later on because they get very competitive, and as my dad mentioned, they have limited seats. So you want to be very careful when you're applying. Do you want to apply to a program where you're guaranteed that degree? Or do you want to apply somewhere where you can try to get that degree? Or do you want to apply to a school where you can get any degree and they don't have any restrictions? So you should, think about that while you're applying.
So one question Saurabh asked, can't you get admitted to arts and science, then do computer science, right? So yes, as Ayushi mentioned, many schools you can do it after first year, but be cautious because some schools can only get you direct admission the freshman year in computer science. After that, your doors are pretty much closed, right? So do your homework, do your research, make sure that you apply correctly, and don't get into that. After first year, you'll be able to change it, and then you will get stuck, and then you are looking for a transfer.
Another question we got in the chat is, so what if we don't have any compelling stories to tell? In that case, what essay should we write? And so that's a really good question, because I think a lot of people during application season feel like, oh, I'm not special, or I don't have anything good. All of these other people are so much smarter than I am. What am I doing? Like, what did I do wrong? It's very easy to get caught up in that mindset. And I personally did, at least for like a couple months. And it was very like tough on yourself. And it's like, it's easy to compare yourself and put yourself down than it is to, compare yourself and put yourself up. So I would recommend, for like thinking about different essay topics, as I mentioned, utilize that YouTube page, but don't use it to compare yourself. Use it to understand what writing strategies they're using, or like what different types of stories they're telling, how they are telling their stories. Because a lot of times you'll realize is that some of these essays, they take something very simple. Like they'll take something like, one example is like some girl talked about eating breakfast with her family. And she made that into an entirely beautiful essay, and she got admitted into a lot of really awesome schools. So it's like, it's not always about like how extravagant your experience is. It's more about how can you make it personal to yourself, and how can you really show them that you have the qualities it takes to be at that university.
And one other thing that I would like to add is, like, if basically you started thinking in 12th grade, right before essays, and they start scrambling, that's the reason we have this talk, right? So that you start preparing from 9th grade onwards, right? Because honestly, we could have done a better job, but if somebody could have told us, like, start from the 9th grade onwards, right? But I would say that you guys please learn from us, right? Start preparing, start thinking from the 9th grade onwards. Right? It will become easier. Otherwise, it will become bit challenging when you get into 11th and 12th grade. There are a few more questions, Ayushi, on chat.
Aryan, there was a question more geared towards like more international applicants. So they're like talking about, how do you take like college classes over the summer, or like get involved in volunteering and things like that. So
Wait, they want to take college classes over the summer? I'm sorry, I don't see the message. Can you tell me who it's by?
one of them, I don't remember. I just remember seeing that somewhere, but
There is a question about the postgraduate. So for this is specifically for undergrad, but for postgrad, you get to take GRE and I think TOEFL as well, right? There could be an opportunity for us to conduct or maybe someone from MBM alumni can conduct a session for postgrad. I think that's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think I can just quickly talk about all I know about postgrad admission. So there's GRE if you want to get into engineering, I think, and then there's GMAT if you want to go like for a management degree. And then the process is the same. I'm not sure if they have the same dates and everything as us, but they apply to college, then they have to apply for a visa. But I think for actually yeah, so one of the questions I got in the chat, which I wanted to talk about, was whether if you have to take the TOEFL or IELTS. They're both the same. You could take you could take either one of them. It's just that TOEFL is more centered towards the US, and IELTS. If you take I would say take IELTS, because if you take IELTS, you can use that score to apply to colleges in the UK, and I think even some places in the Europe, except in Europe, except IELTS. TOEFL is just US, so you probably want to take the one that helps more.
got another question in the chat. Can you time 2 ED applications, round 1, round 2, at least one ED with some other EA applications? So yeah, ED does get a little bit confusing. There are 2 waves of ED. There is like ED1, which is like a little bit earlier, and then ED2, which is at the same time as regular decisions. So the way that works is that if you don't get into your ED1 school, you can then apply ED2. But if you get into the ED2 school, you have to forego every other university and only go to that one. So that's how that works. In terms of ED and EA, you can apply ED to a school just in general, and you can also apply early action. But if you get into the ED school, no matter what your outcomes are for your EA schools, you have to go to the ED school. So that's kind of how that works. You can apply ED and EA, but another caveat to that is if you apply REA, which is the restrictive thing that I talked about, that one is only, you can only apply to that school early.
Let me just add on to that. The ED applications are typically November 1st until November 15th, right? And they typically, give a response by December 15th, right? So let's say if you applied for 1 ED and 5 EAs, right? And you got accepted by December 15th, right? And they will give you, a couple of weeks to, not even couple of weeks. They will just say that you are admitted. And at that moment, you have to withdraw all of your applications that you already done, and you cannot apply to any other school in future. ED means you are pretty much committed to them, right? That's the challenges with ED. Any other question? I think there are a few on chat, but if you can speak up, there are quite a few on chat. But I think Aryan has answered most of them.
Yeah, and if you have questions, we'd love to hear from you and see you all. So it'd be fun if you could turn on your camera and say your questions.
And also there is a Google form. If you can submit Google form and you can put in the comment, we'll be happy to answer, there.
So I have a question. If my school doesn't offer any APs in 10th grade, can I take them out of the school, like online, or self-study them?
Yeah, so kind of what I did in terms of like not being able to take a class or an AP at my school was I just self-studied the course. There are options for you to take a course at like an online school. I know one of them is like Apex Learning. There's like a lot of different options for that, but you can definitely self-study. You can buy like the prep books and then take the test itself. So you don't have to take the entire course. You can just study for the exam.
All right, I think we are like half an hour over, and I think let's give it for another couple of questions. Otherwise, we call it good. And if there are any more questions, please reach out to us. There is a URL that we posted. So yeah. Any other last minute questions?
Yeah, if you have any more questions, you can reach out to my LinkedIn. I just posted in the chat. So if you have more personal questions, feel free to let me know. And then I think Aryan, you can also post yours so people can ask you questions.
And in fact, let me, yes.
Hi, boss. I have a question regarding an approach where, say, you do undergraduate from a good college in India, and you take you are more matured to take a postgraduate course in US. What is your take on that school of thought?
So basically, I think, go ahead, Aryan. Go ahead.
I would say I think that's what most people do, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I would suggest going for it. I think it's up to personal choice. If you're trying to do an undergrad in the US, there's no downside to either. I'm not sure if anyone has the right answer to what the upside is, but I'm happy that being able to do my undergrad in the US, I get to do things like internships and potentially even participate in research in my senior year with professors that are recognized globally. So I know my friends in India personally aren't too worried about these things, but it could be different where you are located. Like maybe the I think it depends on what college you're going to in India. If you're going to a good college in India, I think it's not worth it. Maybe not always worth it to come to the US.
There is another question. Should I go for SAT or ACT since SAT is not mandatory? Avishi?
Wait, where is that question? Oh, okay, since it's not, okay. So in my, like during this year, the application season for class of 2021, a lot of the schools were test optional, meaning that you didn't need to submit your scores. And that's probably true for this year as well. And what I would say for that is just like, even though it says test optional, imagine if you were an admissions officer and you saw two identical applications. but the only change is on one of them, you see an SAT score, right? How would you react to it, right? There's no definite answer on whether you should or shouldn't. Obviously, if you don't have a good score, then maybe you shouldn't opt for that. But if you have like a decent score, like a better score than you like imagine, then you kind of ask yourself, if I saw two side-by-side applications exactly the same, one with a score, one without a score, what would your immediate thought would be? For me, I would think, okay, if I have a good score on there, that would probably add to my application. Again, it doesn't have to be a perfect score or anything, but it would probably be nice to see a score on there, because the purpose of standardized exams is to compare you across a standard. Like, it's to provide a basis for the admissions readers, and to show that you're doing well on this basis is, it doesn't hurt. So that's my take on it, but it depends on, your individual situation.
Two more questions. Advantage of taking IB over AP courses.
So IB and AP, I did not take IB because my school doesn't offer IB. There's a lot of schools that offer IB that don't offer AP. I would generally say, though, speaking to my friends who are in IB schools and they don't take APs, APs generally give you more credit than IB schools do. So when you go into college, you'll be able to waive some of your requirements for classes and things like that with AP credits. So, I mean, honestly, there's no disadvantage to either. Both are very comparable. It's just that in my experience, I found AP to be a lot less intensive, but also you get the work you put in, you get the rewards for that.
Is another question. What are the advantages? Okay, so between SAT and ACT, which one requires essay writing?
I think it's the SAT, right, Ayushi?
Yeah. Actually, both include essay portions, but both are optional now, and colleges aren't looking at them. So there's no advantage to taking the essay. I suppose you could take it, but it wouldn't make a difference, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say don't take the essay if they discontinued the essay, someone says, but essentially the essay would be graded globally. So if you're studying in India and you take the essay, I prepared maybe like a year for that essay and I still got a bad score. So I was like, I don't think the essay is something you want to do, especially if it's optional. So
so applying for UC, is there any different portal or Common App will be okay? So this is something that I didn't cover in the presentation, but there's 3 different portals that you can apply through. One is Common App, which is the most common application portal for colleges. This one will pretty much feature all schools except for the exception of all of the UCs, MIT, UW, etc. Like these are on separate applications. So Common App is the most popular. Then you have Coalition Application Portal, which is basically another version of Common App. It's just for other sets of schools. So that's you can find more of this information online and see which schools you can take where application. And then finally, the most popular outside application.
मेरे लिए नहीं सुन रही, मेरे को पढ़ाई नहीं करनी है, you shut your.
So there's a separate UC application, and that kind of has all of the different UCs on it. So you would send one application to all of the UCs. You don't have to write specific essays and things like that. It's just one gigantic application that goes to every single UC that you choose. So
we will add one slide. I think it's an important question. We'll add one slide, right, covering this. So before we should, so please hit submit the form and you'll get the updated slide deck. This information.
And one last thing, I know people are asking about SAT versus ACT. If you start in grade 9, you can take both of them. You have enough time to take both the exams. So I know people that did bad on the SAT and then somehow magically did so well on the ACT. So that's why we're asking you to start early so that you can try and figure out which one suits you better.
And other question, can you please tell me the cost of living in USA per year? Right? Maybe Ayushi can cover, but what I can say is, if you don't get any scholarship, just you're not getting any scholarship, you're not getting any support from anywhere, right? It could depend on, if you are in state, your cost could vary between, I think, 20,000 to 30,000. Ayushi, is that right? if you are in state, or 20 to
Now, I
35,000
think it's like to 40,000 for UCs. So
for
it,
UCs.
yeah.
For in state, right? For UW Seattle, for in state, I think it is $27,000 to $30,000, right? But if you are out of state, you can think of adding 30,000 on top, right? Whatever the base fees is. Like if it is UC, it is $40,000 per year, right? Then if you are out of state or international, you add another $30,000. For example, Berkeley, it is around $70,000, right? If you don't get any scholarship, anything for out of state, right? But there are scholarship opportunities. There are merit-based scholarship, and there are diversity candidate scholarship opportunities that you can find online.
Yeah, for the last few questions, we'd appreciate if you could just ask them out loud. So any last questions?
Hi, can I ask something?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm Aditi and I'm studying in 10th grade in India right now. And I will be taking my SATs next year in 11th grade. And like I will most probably be pursuing the science fields, physics, chemistry, and maths. So is the mathematics section of the SATs really hard, or will I be able to cover that syllabus on my own?
Yeah, just don't worry about math. You can you can go on Khan Academy, and you can find, I think, 5 or 7 free practice SAT exams, and I promise you they're going to be like that. So if you can do well on those, you'll do well on the actual test. The math portion, if you did well in 10th grade in India, you can close your eyes and do it. So don't worry about math. I would say focus on English.
All right, thank you so much. And how many times can you retake the SATs?
As many times as you want. So take it in like you can take it multiple times. You can take it in the summer in April, and then you can also take the one in August. That's what I did. So
All right, thank you.
I'll just add one thing to that point, that if you take SAT or ACT multiple times, they super score. So if you get ACT, if you get math and reading well on first time, and then writing and science well better on second time, all of that is super scored. So always take at least 2 or 3 times, and if you have already done good on one part, then focus on the other part next time.
I have a question. Yeah, so I'm currently in 8th grade, and English isn't really one of my strong suits. So how would I start preparing for kind of the essay prompts that I have to do for college admissions?
So I kind of, in terms of like essay prompts and like for college admissions and like writing not being your strong suit, I definitely like relate to that. Writing was not my strong suit. But what I would recommend for you to do to really get into the writing mode is like take some of the harder English courses in high school. But I also wouldn't worry about it at 8th grade. You'll definitely do a lot of writing and you'll improve throughout high school. So that should not be a huge problem. But if you want to get like writing, refine your writing, definitely take the harder writing courses like AP English or AP English Literature, things like that. But at the same time, like college applications, they're like very different writing styles. Like academic writing is very different from what the type of writing you'll see in college applications. And so I'd recommend watching those YouTube videos, like essays that got me into on YouTube, so that you can get an idea of kind of what they're like looking for, what the different styles are. But again, you're only in 8th grade, so just take it easy. I know it's easy to come under the loop. So just take it easy and take some of the harder writing courses. And then when you're in 11th grade or 10th grade, watch some of those YouTube videos so you have an idea of kind of what they're looking for.
Are there any like courses outside of school that you would recommend for this kind of stuff?
Not specifically for English and like writing. I would just say whatever's at your school is probably good enough. If you need outside help, then I would recommend getting the whole counselor thing, because they can help you in the writing aspect of it. So I wouldn't specifically say anything outside of school was extremely beneficial. Obviously, like reading is not a bad thing. So just reading in general, you can read books, read the news, things like that. But I wouldn't recommend any course.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I had another question.
Go ahead.
So is it important to take these some summer school programs that some of the universities like Ivy League offers for high school students across the world? Because in India, we don't have a specific summer break after school, so we don't get the time to take these summer school programs. And a lot of the people that I talked to said these are very important if you want to get into an Ivy League college.
I mean, it's I know someone that went to Harvard's summer program, and he ended up going to Georgia Tech. So I mean, I don't think just by going that guarantees you admission. This person that I'm talking about had a 1600 or 36 on the ACT, which is essentially a 1600. So I think it's very expensive to go, and a lot of people will go just because they have nothing else to do as a vacation or something. I'm pretty sure they don't. It's just a paid tour of the college. What I would suggest is, if you really want to look around campus, you can go and visit yourself with your family. But there's no point. I don't, at least personally, I don't believe that if you go and pay a lot of money to these Ivy League colleges to visit their campus, they'll take you. I don't think that's it's a good train of thought.
All right, thank you. And do you have any specific tips for boosting your portfolios for college applications? Because in India, you don't have any AP classes thingy in the school, so you have to give the exams on your own. And they basically just give MUNs, that is like all you can do apart from academics. So it's really hard to pick out things that you can do here. So any tips?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, have you been doing MUNs? If you have, it's great because I didn't do them and I still got into a lot of colleges in the US. But MUNs help a lot, and I understand because we don't have these clubs and organizations and conferences like people do in the US. So what's important is MUN and then volunteering. So like you can if your dad knows, or like if your parents know some people that own NGOs, or like in your neighborhood, if someone owns an
Yeah, I
NGO.
mean, I already have an internship at an NGO, but like I'm not into the MUN structure right now. I've only participated in two. So, I mean, and I personally do not think one internship at an NGO will help me because like I want to get into Ivy League or Stanford or something like that. So the application has to be awesome.
Yeah, so I see your point. Like, don't think that it won't help you, but I'm not sure if talking about that will get you into an Ivy League. But yeah, sure, you can definitely think a lot about how you want to express what you did for the NGO. Like, you can say that you helped them double their size. I mean, if there's like 5 people working there, you get 5 of your friends to join, and then it's 10 people. So you can say that you doubled their network or something like that. So yeah, I think the way you put it will have a bigger impact than what you might actually do.
So one thing that I would like to add is, like, I think as Aaron mentioned, that we don't have a lot of clubs in India, and I was talking to these folks yesterday, right? That's an opportunity. If things are not there, create one. She did create here a couple of clubs, right? And she moved here in 10th grade, not even 9th grade. It was a brand new school for her, where a lot of kids were established already from their middle school and even 9th grade in school, right? But that was basically, she used this as an opportunity and created a few clubs here. So if things are not there, go and take a lead and do things, right? And put that in your college applications, right? Show your leadership. Important thing.
Thank you.
I see Daksh, you have your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Yeah, for Daksh, actually, I'm his dad, Puneet. So yeah, he's out already. Because he's a ninth grader, and he's rising ninth grader. And the thing is, he's going into a STEM school. He has been chosen, and that STEM school is having specially like a two programs, engineering and medical. And then there is another pathway for computer science. So there are three pathways. So is there any specific recommendation for like a STEM school students? Or I know they are going to have so many like academic activities, and they don't have a sports or those cultural activities kind of a things. So how do they, like, their story will come out? I mean to say, you know, their story is going to be more on the academic side, you know, for the college admission. And that's what I'm always thinking, is it good to go into the STEM school or not?
So we were kind of in the same boat in terms of we could have applied to go to our local STEM school in the area, or I would have continued at Eastlake, which is the school I continued at. And kind of the discussion we had then was like, obviously these STEM schools have really specialized programs. So you're getting a lot of the academic expertise from like really awesome teachers and really good courses. But kind of like the main thing that kind of kind of messed with me was that if you want to go to a STEM school, you're also like as you mentioned, you're opting out to miss some of those activities like sports and like more like fun, like art, dance, those kinds of things that you'll miss out at those schools. And what I also noticed is that like at Eastlake, the school that's not the STEM school, but that the school I went to, I was exposed to a lot of different types of people. So you would see a lot of people who are very athletics focused. You would see a lot of people who are very research focused, a lot of people who are just like focused on like more English, social sciences. Also, you obviously have your STEM people. So it's like you're interacting with a large, like a really diverse population. But I will say that STEM schools, like my friends who are at STEM schools, they had a really awesome experience as well. Like what they had to do is that all of these clubs that I'm talking about were not directly available to them. So what they would do is they would find other schools and their different clubs to participate in, and they would have to do other extracurriculars outside of their school. So it's like something like you have to do a lot more coordination on yourself and really figure out what the right plan is. I think either case you'll be just fine. Like I don't think you can go wrong. Every year there's applicants that come from regular schools and come from STEM schools. So I don't think you can go wrong either way. It's just that realizing that, do you want to put an extra effort to go to these extra activities, or do you want to continue at a school where you have all of these activities and you can also focus yourself? So I think either way would be beneficial for your student, but I would definitely keep those things in mind, because if you want to build a strong academic foundation, then maybe the STEM school is a route for you. You just have to do a lot more of your own involvement in finding those opportunities for the student.
There is other question. She got a dream award, dean's award, but she still wanna apply for some scholarship, but her college is not giving out. I think it's Shruti is asking.
Yeah, I think that's just because the person might be an international student. So what happens is some colleges, no matter how good you are at academics, if they have a policy against giving out scholarships to international students, they just won't. So what I would say is that if your offer letter doesn't say that you have a scholarship, it's very unlikely that you'll get there and you'll do well and you'll be able to get a scholarship, because it's like I said, some colleges don't they don't have it in them. They can't do it for international students. So, and I'm sure that UCSC Santa Cruz might be one of those colleges. So you might want to look into what colleges do give out scholarships and what don't to international students specifically.
I just to add to what Aryan said, right? It doesn't hurt to ask for explicitly, even if it is not there in the offer letter, right? Do some Google search and see if they have, if somebody has got the scholarship in the past, right? And take a shot at it. You will be surprised in some cases, right? I will leave it to that, right? Even people could think that even public schools don't give scholarships, right? But there are cases where they have given scholarships. It doesn't hurt. Ask. You won't get things if you don't ask. So better ask, and ask nicely. Okay, there's one more question. Medical study in USA, that comparison of India. That's hard, I guess. I don't know who can take that question.
So I have my roommate is actually pre-med, so he's a medical student. He's American. All I know is that the process is long. So first you do 4 years of undergrad, and then you go to med school for, I don't know, 2-3 years, and then you have to do residency where you don't get paid. So it's a long process before you can start being financially independent.
So in residency, you get paid, but not get paid too much. But normally in med school, preparation is very, very longer as compared to India, because you have to do undergrad, then you have to do the medical school, then you have to do the residency, and then you have to do the specialization. So by the time you become a doctor in US is close to like 30 years. I have like a lot of my cousins, my family members here, but a lot of people choose that profession. So if required, I can arrange a meeting for med school.
My son is going to med school, so if somebody needs any help or guidance specifically to that, feel free to reach out. I'll put my email ID in the chat box.
Awesome. That's great. So does asking for a scholarship put you on disadvantage for considering for the admission? Okay, so see, the thing is that my understanding is that you already got into the school and now you are asking for a scholarship. So you already got admission. Right? Don't ask. There is no provision for you to ask for a scholarship when you are submitting a college application. Right? The college has decided to accept you. After that, you can explore scholarship opportunities. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ayushi, or I am.
Like, I think when I was applying, some colleges had it. Some colleges would say, do you want to apply for scholarships in the application? But and people would say that if you say yes, I need scholarships, they will reject you or they wouldn't want to admit you. But I think that I don't think it makes a lot of difference. If I would say just go ahead and put yes for scholarships, because the schools that ask these type of questions are usually like big Ivy schools or big private schools. So it's not like I think that they would give you scholarships if you were good enough to get in. That's what I'm saying. But that's just a small subset of schools, not all schools.
Yeah, I don't think, see, they would see that you submitted like a request for a scholarship usually only after you're admitted. So they don't even look at that section. So it doesn't hurt to say you want financial aid or you want some sort of scholarship.
Okay, so I'm probably going to have to hop off for lunch soon, but I'll answer this last question. So I'm in the university. I study at the University of Maryland, and Ashish Uncle has already done that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So if there's any last questions, just say them out loud, and then I think we'll close up the session at 10:30.
And feel free to reach out to us after the session if needed.
All right, let's wrap it up now. Okay, thank you everyone, and to hang around. I mean, it's a good participation even at the end of 2 hours, right? So thank you, Ayushi and Aryan, to make this happen. And if you have any question, please feel free to post that question in our form, and we'll get back to you. We'll share if we have submitted the form. We'll share the recording as well as slide deck. Thank you all. Appreciate it, and have a good night for folks in India, and have a nice day rest of the weekend for folks in US.
Thank you, Ashish, for
Thank
hosting
you.
this.
Bye.